Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Feel your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching
let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott, and thank you for listening in at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, and on Revolution Radio. As we welcome you to tonight's show, broadcasting out of Uncle Jimbo's cabin right here in the Great White North, live on this Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning if you're on the East Coast, or over in the UK. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we do this thing every night of the week as we want to be your one-stop shop around the world when it comes to the supernatural, conspiratorial, ufological, spiritual, and so much more. If you like our theme music, you'll like the guitar god Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Hey, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like. Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Find us on TuneIn, download our shows from iTunes, and of course our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time we say hi, how are you to everyone joining in the packed houses of our chat rooms in the Revolution Radio chat room on the High Plains Talk Radio Network, along with our fans on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, Forest Moon Paranormal, Spaced Out Radio's chat room on Spreaker, and our flagship chat room on Facebook, the SOR Space Travelers. It's time to sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club if you haven't just yet. It's only $5 a month, and with that, your name gets entered into monthly prize draws. You get access to private group interviews, access to a special section for your postings, and so much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While on our website, you can read our latest blogs, check out Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for your latest and weird news, and if you've had a really cool or odd, maybe strange or scary experience, go to our SOR Sightlines report. It's right there for you on the homepage. If you've had something that you want investigated, our intrepid researcher, Mike Schmidt, yes, he has one badass goatee, is right there waiting to take your report. All your information is 100% confidential. Remember, if you're a listener on Revolution Radio, the Double R Machine is the largest non-profit radio station online going. Do us a favor, go to visit freedomslips.com and donate today. Tonight we're going to delve deep into the world of conspiracies as we take on everything from the Queen being reptilian to those pesky flat earthers who just won't let it go that the earth isn't flat. At least that's what I believe. Yes, we are going to have some fun tonight with author and conspiracy theorist Christopher Berry from across the pond in Great Britain. Conspiracies come in all forms. We have talked so many different topics on this show on the subject, from 9/11 to the Mandela effect, cryptids, JFK, and the hype around crisis actors and false flags. The fact that we have been able to prove is that it's not all of us tinfoil hat wearing people are just a bunch of wingnuts who think life in general is all wrong. No, indeed it's not. And we have seen other conspiracies proven just this year. Just look at the run-up to the White House. WikiLeaks has also proven many of them as well when it comes to the governmental shenanigans going on. Time travel and the Loch Ness Monster will also be on tap for tonight. If you want to read Mr. Barry's website, I highly suggest you do. crbarryauthor.wordpress.com. We bring in Christopher Barry all the way from London, England. It's 5 in the morning. I hope your coffee is warm and tasting good for you, my friend.
It is. Yes. Thank you, Dave.
Excellent. I'm glad to have you with us. I'm going to get you to move just a tad bit closer to your microphone if you don't mind. That would be just perfect. I want to thank you so much for getting up very early at your time to come on here, right the west coast of Canada. The Commonwealth is strong between our two nations. You know, we have to keep that going. I want to say thank you once again for doing that. And, you know, conspiracy theories are abound in almost every country around every different type of topic. What made you decide, Christopher, that you wanted to start delving into this a little bit more and start writing about it?
Well, I think I think it actually started with my my novel. So if anyone wants to go on my website, one of the sections on there is about the Million Eyes trilogy. So that's million eyes as in 1 million eyes. Lots of people get confused about that. But the novel sort of started it off. I've always been a bit of a sci-fi fan. I've always enjoyed conspiracy fiction. So I suppose things like the Da Vinci Code, I mean, that's one of my favourite movies. So that kind of started it off. The novel itself is that the premise of it is that our history didn't happen the way it was, the way we understand it to have happened, and it didn't happen the way it should have happened, and that time travelers have been interfering with certain events in our history, and the main characters of the book basically stumble across evidence that certain events didn't happen the way they should have. So were it not for these time travelers, the princes in the tower wouldn't have disappeared. So these are the two young princes from the 1400s who just vanished with no evidence whatsoever. Nobody, still to this day, nobody knows what happened to them. Another event I'm tackling in the book is that I basically say that were it not for these time travelers, Princess Diana wouldn't have been killed. And I use the conspiracy theories that surround her death as part of the plot of the book. So it's a slightly different thing that I'm doing, I suppose. But it's inspired by conspiracy movies and conspiracy TV shows that I've watched. So Prison Break, that's another one. There's a conspiracy plot line to do with the government in that series. And 24 as well, one of my favourite TV series, that deals with a lot of conspiracy plot lines involving the government and terrorist conspiracies, and some conspiracies that go right the way to the top of the government. And I love all of that, so I wanted to put all of that into my fiction. And I think as I've been working on that book, I've been reading a lot about conspiracy theories and a lot about these topics, and that's kind of what inspired me to start the blog. I wanted to start investigating all kinds of conspiracy theories to do with monsters and time travel and space and aliens, and that's kind of where the blog came from. And another thing I have been doing is it's to do with the novel. I'm writing a series of short stories that are set in the same world as the novel, as Million Eyes. I call them the Million Eyes short stories, and they're part of a plan to basically improve my writing, improve my fiction writing, hone my writing skills, but also they're to introduce people to the world that is in the book. and I use the conspiracy theories that I write about on the blog. So I write an article every week, every Thursday, a new article comes out, and it can deal with any kind of conspiracy theory or any kind of unsolved murder or unsolved mystery or historical mystery. And very often I use these particular topics to create a new short story, and I link these mysteries and these conspiracy theories to this mysterious group of time travelers that seem to be interfering with our history, which is what the novel's all about. So that's sort of where it comes from.
Did you have an experience or something that you needed to look into, Chris, that made you start to focus on these topics? Because not everybody just follows in. All of a sudden, I know for me, it was looking at 9/11. And
Yep.
it didn't happen for me until literally about 3-4 years ago, when all of a sudden I started remembering, because I was working in a newsroom when 9/11 happened in Vancouver. Okay. And I remember everything from working in that newsroom and how hectic it was that day, and some of the interviews that I got to help out our newsroom, being the lowly sports reporter of the station. And, at that point, they try and make you in sports feel like you're totally irrelevant, and in that case, we were. But it wasn't until 3-4 years ago when I started looking into it a little bit more, and what really made me start asking questions about the whole conspiracy side, and I've never been a tinfoiler, was Building 7. Building 7 absolutely did it for me. So did you have that point in your own history that made you decide that you need to start asking more questions and looking into different alternatives?
Well, the thing is, I suppose what I should mention is that I wouldn't call myself a conspiracy theorist. I love writing about all of this stuff. I think it's fascinating, and there are certain theories that are out there and certain questions that people ask that really don't have very satisfactory answers or don't have any answers at all. But there's not many of these conspiracy theories that I do actually subscribe to myself. I think with me, what draws me to writing about conspiracy theories and investigating what a lot of people think about major events like 9/11 and about things like flat Earth and the royal family and our presidents and everything being reptilian aliens. I think it's to do with the fact that I love a good villain. So in any story, the villain is often my favourite character. And in a conspiracy story, so in a conspiracy fiction TV show or book or anything by Dan Brown, there are multiple villains, and all the villains are in the shadows, and the villains are pulling the strings of all the things that are happening in the story. And I love that idea. I love the idea of someone hiding behind the curtain, which is why my website's called Behind the Curtain, pulling those strings. And I think this is why I love. While I don't necessarily, I mean, I used to be a lawyer, so I'm very hot on making sure that there's evidence for everything. And with a lot of conspiracy theories, I think there's a lot of piecing together different coincidences into a theory, and I try and make sure that I've got enough evidence before I just say that I believe in something. And that's my lawyer background. But I do love the idea of investigating these things, and there are, as I say, there are some theories out there. I mean, Princess Diana's death, which is obviously one of the reasons why I've featured it in the book I'm writing, Million Eyes. There are some uncomfortable, unanswered questions there, and there's allegations about Jimmy Savile that are and basically a major cover-up that the BBC and some quite high level people in government are potentially a part of. That while I haven't investigated that on the blog yet, that there's some very uncomfortable questions there, because there's people back in the 70s talking about Jimmy Savile having been involved in really seedy things, and yet it only came out a few years ago that he was like Britain's most prolific sex offender. And it's like, well, how could this have been, a secret for so long? And obviously the theory is that it wasn't. Lots of people knew about it. Lots of people were covering it up. And I think there is quite a lot to be said for that. And yeah, while as I say, I don't subscribe to every conspiracy theory I read about. But I love writing about them because they are fascinating. And some of the things people believe are fascinating. But as I say, it's to do with the fact that I love the idea of a collective of secret villains controlling everything.
As you have looked into all these different conspiracies, because obviously as a writer on conspiracy, Chris, you need to research, and you probably research a lot. Do you notice a difference in the conspiracies that happen in North America compared to what's happening in Europe, Asia, or even around where you are in London?
Not particularly. I suppose the conspiracy theory is associated with America to quite an extent. There are more conspiracy theories about major events in America than there appear to be in Britain. The interesting thing that I've tried to do in Million Eyes in the novel is that I've tried to focus on just the British conspiracy theory. So the Princes in the Tower, that's an unsolved, quite a famous unsolved mystery from British history, and there are conspiracy theories surrounding that Richard III had the two princes killed because they were a threat to his throne, or that Henry VII had them killed because they were a threat to his throne. But nobody knows what happened to them. Their bodies have never been found. There were two skeletons that were uncovered underneath the Tower of London, but nobody. And the theory is that those are the two boys, but nobody's actually done any testing on the bones to verify that those were the boys. Still to this day, nobody knows. I think there was some disagreement over the fact that those were the boys. I think one of the skeletons was possibly a girl, and the ages didn't match up or something like that. So so I've tried to focus on the British conspiracies, and probably the biggest one is Princess Diana's death. That is still very hot in this country. There's quite a lot of people who still believe that Princess Diana was bumped off, whether it was by the British royal family or MI5 or something like that, or maybe, well, there are obviously those who believe that there's a new world order run by alien reptilians, and that Princess Diana's death was all part of that conspiracy. But yeah, there are a lot of people who still believe that Princess Diana's death is suspect. But I think the conspiracy theory, like the popularity of it, seems to go back to JFK and Roswell. These are really big American conspiracy theories. And then obviously Roswell has led on to dozens and dozens of other UFO conspiracy theories and sightings and alleged abductions, and I haven't looked into many of those yet. I have looked into Roswell, but yeah, I haven't. There are people all across the world who you could argue that many of them are paranoid, and they see coincidences everywhere. When something major happens, when some major catastrophe happens, they start picking holes in the official story perhaps because of an inherent distrust of the government, which and there's no reason why we should necessarily trust the government, because we know that they lie to us all of the time. But yeah, it could be that distrust. It could be just a paranoia that seems to spread from person to person. It seems to be. I did do an article like quite early on when I started the blog, trying to look into the psychology behind conspiracy theories, and there is a psychology to it. Yeah, so I think that there are conspiracy theories appearing across the world for different reasons, and it's either people piecing together coincidences, seeing patterns that aren't necessarily there, but there is also the fact that there are things that happen that don't have satisfactory explanations, and the official stories, that they don't, that things aren't completely explained, and obviously the government do hold things back, and that obviously makes people suspicious. And we know for a fact that cover-ups do happen. I wrote about a very real cover-up a few weeks ago to do with the US government that really makes you wonder about 9/11. So yeah, I think that's why it's quite prevalent.
Well, let's fire this thing up here. Let's get into a little bit of history when we go back to August 31st, 1997.
Okay.
And Princess Diana and her boyfriend / lover, Dodi Al-Fayed, are driving until that horrible, horrible accident. Take us through that event.
Right, well, it had been quite a fraught day for them. They'd been chased by the press right from... They'd just come back from a holiday in Sardinia, I think it was. And they were chased from the airfield where they landed, then their private jet, all the way to the Ritz Hotel. And then there were press outside the Ritz Hotel waiting for every tiny flicker of curtains while they were in their hotel room. And there was a little bit of back and forth because Dodi had an apartment in Paris, so they were going back and forth to there. And I think there was, later on in the evening, there was a plan to go for dinner, and that plan was scuppered by the press because I think Dodi tried to elude the press, but they were followed to the restaurant. I think there were people at the restaurant, so I mean there are suspicions that somebody tipped off the press. So and there were suspicions that was continually going on. Some people say that Diana was tipping off the press, but yeah, they ended up having to go back to the Ritz, and they ended up dining in the Ritz. It was really late; it was about 10 o'clock or something like that. And they then decided that they weren't going to stay at the Ritz. They were going to go back to Dodi's apartment. So they left in a Mercedes from the back of the hotel. They were pursued through Paris to Dodi's apartment. And then they obviously came to this famous tunnel. And that's where the crash happened. But obviously, interestingly, we know how what was left of the car and what happened afterwards, and obviously there's numerous reports and photographs of the car, but there's no CCTV footage of the journey or of what happened in the tunnel whatsoever, which is intriguing. It's said that there were like 11, or I think I've seen several figures, 11 or 14 cameras along the route, and none of them were working, which is bizarre. There's also a lot of questions about the driver, Henri Paul. The official verdict is that he was over the drink drive limit. He was drunk basically, and he was driving recklessly. And it was the cause of the crash was him, and also the pursuing press, which made him speed up and everything. But there are theories that I think the evidence is a bit limited, but there are theories that his bloods were swapped with that of a drunk driver who had been killed, which is quite interesting. I think all of this stuff came out in the inquest that happened in 2007, but I think it was all ruled to be it wasn't evidential or something like that. They decided there was no real evidence for some of these theories, but yeah, there are some uncomfortable questions there, and there's also some very strange. I mean, Diana herself wrote a letter a few years before the crash saying that she believed Prince Charles was planning a car crash to kill her off so that he could remarry, which I think is strikingly coincidental, given what eventually happened to her. There are some strange questions. There's also, and one of the things that I've used as part of the novel, as part of Million Eyes. There's a mysterious white car that nobody's ever found. So it was a Fiat Uno that we know for a fact collided with Diana's Mercedes in the tunnel. Obviously, we have no idea quite exactly what happened because there was no CCTV to prove it. But there was some white paint left on the Mercedes, and I think there was some smashed glass from a tail light or from a headlight, which I think has been verified as being from a white Fiat Uno. And nobody's come forward to say that they were driving the Fiat Uno. And the Fiat Uno's never been traced, ever. Like I think the French did quite an expansive search for this Fiat Uno, and they never found it. So I think that's bizarre as well. The theory is that the Fiat Uno was part of the deliberate plan to make Diana's car crash. It was used to block the vehicle in the road and make it swerve into the pillar. And you know, I can't say for certain that that's not what happened. I think there's a lot of eyewitnesses as well who said that they saw very bright flashes in the tunnel. I mean, obviously there were paparazzi, the press were flashing their cameras constantly, but some eyewitnesses have said that there were very bright flashes coming from the tunnel, more than just camera flashes. And the theory there that is that this was that there was some like bright flares or something like that used by perhaps some people on motorbikes, that perhaps some of the press were not actually press. They were part of the group of conspirators that were deliberately setting up the vehicle to crash. And perhaps they were perhaps it was the Fiat Uno and the people on the motorcycles firing up these flares to blind Henri Paul, the driver, and that was all part of the plan to make the car crash. I don't know, but yeah, there was a whole police report that was done that I've read, and they conclude in that report that there's no real proof for the conspiracy theories, but there's just a lot of strange questions there and strange unanswered unanswered issues, and the fact that this Fiat Uno's never been found is very mysterious to me.
Now, Dodi Al-Fayed's father is the one
Yeah.
who has really pushed the conspiracy, even to this
Yes.
day.
Yes.
He does not believe the official story. He has sunk millions of dollars into investigations trying to find out the truth to what happened. And does he still to this day go public with what he has possibly found, or does he try and keep his information quite secretive?
Well, as far as I'm aware, he's still very pro the conspiracy theories. He believes that Princess Diana was murdered by our royal family, and he specifically targets Prince Philip. He believes that Prince Philip was behind everything. And I think, if I remember right, I think there was a letter from Prince Philip to Diana, basically threatening her. Diana's relationship with the royal family was very, very strained, obviously, because of the divorce from Charles, and the fact that Princess Diana was talking to the media about her relationship with Charles, which I don't think went down very well with the royals. So yes, Mohammed Al-Fayed believes that Prince Philip was behind Diana's death, and yeah, as far as I'm aware, that hasn't changed. I mean, he was the one who, I believe, he funded a documentary which was only made in 2011, so 5 years ago, called Unlawful Killing. I don't know. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of it. I have not seen it yet.
Yeah, I've seen it, but only because I was able to download a copy of it. It's actually banned in this country, and I don't know if it's also banned in America. I don't think it is, but I know that it's banned in this country. And it was made by Keith Allen, who UK listeners will know that's Lily Allen's dad. Well, he's famous in his own right, but I didn't know much about him before watching this documentary. And he speaks to Mohammed Al-Fayed, and he speaks to various other people who knew Diana, and have some insight into the crash and into everything that led up to the crash. And I think Mohammed Al-Fayed was the one, as far as I'm aware, he's the one who funded it, and he's quite. He's present in this documentary quite a bit, talking to Keith Allen and telling him how he feels about the whole thing, and how the inquest in 2007 just it wasn't satisfactory at all. I think the one of the things that the documentary picks up on is the fact that Prince Philip and the royal family were accused by Mohammed Al-Fayed in that inquest of being involved in Princess Diana's death, but not a single person from the royal family was questioned as part of the inquest. Nobody was called to be questioned, and I think the documentary says that the whole thing was rigged in favour of the royal family, and that they were never under threat of being exposed for anything, because there was no chance anything was going to come out. So a lot of people still think that the inquest was, as I say, it was rigged, and it was it was biased. I think that's still Mohammed Al-Fayed's position.
Gail in the SOR Space Travelers Club is firing off the first question of the night. She is asking, Chris, why do you think anybody would want Princess Diana dead? She was doing so much good for the world.
Yeah, she really was. And I liked her a lot. I mean, I've had to research Princess Diana a lot, and I've researched her death mostly because her death is obviously a key plot point in my book. But yeah, she was doing a lot of great work, and I feel I feel very sorry for her. I did like her quite. When she died, I was still a kid, but I was very aware of her. And I mean, the allegations are to do with the fact that she was dating Dodi Al-Fayed, who was a Muslim, and I think there was some suspicion. Again, I haven't looked into this so much, but there was some suspicion that she was actually pregnant at the time that she died, and she was pregnant with Dodi's child. And the theory is that the royal family were not at all happy. I mean, Mohammed Al-Fayed, he one of the reasons Unlawful Killing, the documentary, is banned in this country is because he calls the royal family racist and gangsters. And he says this multiple times, and he compares Prince Philip to Fred West, and he says all of these defamatory things, which I think is the reason why it's still banned in this country. I don't agree whatsoever that it should be banned whatsoever, but I have very liberal views about censorship and etc. But yeah, so I think a lot of people believe that the royal family are racist, and that they did not want a baby to be born who was related to the future king and was a Muslim or came from a Muslim background. So and there are other theories to do with the fact that Diana was very vocal talking to the press about Charles, and she was just causing the royal family problems. She was very prevalent in the media, whereas the rest of the royal family hadn't been really. They're a bit more. Prince Charles talks to the media, but he doesn't really give interviews or anything like that. And I think her going around the campaigns she was doing with landmines, I think that was riling the royal family as well. She was just doing a lot of stuff that I think they viewed as quite political. They're not supposed to do things like that, and I think they viewed her as a bit of a loose cannon, I think. So yeah, that's one of the reasons that people think that she was killed.
What about the jealousy that the royal family maybe had for her popularity, because she really was the princess of all princesses in the royal family? The people loved her over there. Like, let's face it, if there was a human god, we could put her on that pedestal, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there may well be an element of that as well. Because it was very controversial in this country. I remember that the Queen did not, because there was this outpouring of public grief over Princess Diana's death, and everybody was distraught. I remember my own mum coming down and telling me about Princess Diana's death and bursting into tears because she was so beloved by the people who didn't know her at all, but they felt like they knew her because she was so prevalent in the media, and she was doing all these good things. She was going around hospitals and she was visiting people who had AIDS, and she was doing all of this charity work and changing perceptions of certain illnesses. And
she was being human, is what she was doing.
She was, but the rest of the royal family don't really do that. I think there probably was an element of jealousy, and the fact that the Queen didn't. That's what I was going to say. I went off on a tangent, as I do. She didn't say anything. So after Princess Diana's death, a lot of people were expecting a statement from the royal family. In some guise, but I think the Queen and the princes, Prince Harry and Prince William, were up in Balmoral at the time, and I think a lot of people were expecting the Queen to address the nation and talk about the loss of Princess Diana, and the palace was just silent. The royal family said nothing. I think it was about a week or so before the Queen kind of showed herself and said anything. And there were newspaper headlines, where is our Queen? And, why hasn't she said anything? And then eventually she did give a statement. She does these speeches every Christmas Day, and she did one that was a bit like that. Just talking about Princess Diana and all the good work she did, and that how it's such a loss to the country and to her family. Obviously, a lot of people think that was all rubbish that she was talking, because I think a lot of people know that the relationship was very strained, but. It's the Queen, whenever she addresses the nation, she's very, very. She doesn't show any emotion whatsoever, so it's very difficult to tell how she really feels about anything. But yes, I imagine, there may well have been jealousy over her perception, because the Queen is very popular in this country. The royal family generally is very popular, but the Queen is viewed as very cold. And a little bit robotic, I suppose, and she is a bit like that when she addresses the nation in her Queen's speeches that she does every Christmas. She is a bit like that, whereas Diana wasn't. As you say, Diana was very human. Diana was very warm, and I still remember I was very small at this point, but it was on the news, I think, when Diana went with Prince William and Prince Harry to Thorpe Park, which is quite a popular theme park in this country, and there's some footage of them all on a ride called Loggers Leap, and it's just being a normal family and having a laugh together. And it's very rare that you see the Queen smile, let alone laugh. Whereas, so that's what made Diana so different from the rest of them. She was a person.
Do you think when William takes over the crown, eventually, if the Queen ever dies, because we all know she's a reptilian. Anyways, we're going to get more into that. We're going to get more into that in just a little bit. But do you think that when he becomes king, he will find out the truth as to what happened to his mother? Because those boys have done a lot of tributes. Mainly William has done a lot of tributes to his mother and has recognized her, it seems, a hell of a lot more than he ever has his father. Or do you think that maybe he already knows?
Well, possibly. I mean, I have no idea whether Prince William and Prince Harry think that there's anything suspicious about Diana's death or not. I suspect not. I mean, I don't know how close that family is. I don't know how close William and Harry are to Prince Philip or to the Queen. I don't know how many secrets they have between them. But the thing is, the official line in this country, the official story is that Princess Diana was killed by the press following her and by Henri Paul being drunk. If he actually was. And I think a lot of people do believe that is the case. And I mean, while I think that there are some uncomfortable unanswered questions to do with the crash, and I have used the car crash conspiracy theories as part of my novel, and I'm using all of the coincidences and unanswered questions to basically link what happened to her to these time travelers manipulating history, and I'm basically saying that they are responsible for her death. I'm not sure I would necessarily say myself that she was murdered. There are motives to have killed her. There are unanswered questions to do with her death, and I do think that that the inquest in 2007 was biased. However, there were probably much easier ways to have murdered her than to kill her in a car crash. So that's the only thing that makes me think, well, maybe it did happen the way the way it's been officially reported. I don't know. I wouldn't say that I necessarily subscribe to the conspiracy theory that she was murdered, because I mean, she was doing all this stuff with landmines. If somebody really wanted her dead, couldn't they have just accidentally, rigged a landmine to kill her or something? Maybe that would have that a car crash isn't necessarily going to kill her. Like she may have survived that. That's the only question I have there. But yeah, there are some uncomfortable things. The other thing is that none of them were wearing their seatbelts in the car, which I think is bizarre. And some people have said that the forensic reports to do with the car are either covering something up about the seatbelts being rigged or being faulty, and that's why none of them were working. But I think that's quite bizarre that none of them were wearing their seatbelts, because some people have said that if they were wearing their seatbelts, then they would be alive. So that does make me wonder. Well, maybe the seatbelts weren't working deliberately, and perhaps that was the way to. Because as I say, my question about the conspiracy theories there is, how can you be sure that a car crash is going to kill someone? And it didn't kill everyone in that car. One person survived. But if you rig the seatbelts in the car, maybe that's your way of certainly trying to make sure that everybody dies. Conveniently, the person who did survive has absolutely no memory of the crash or anything that led up to it. So I think that's quite interesting. So
very interesting indeed. Do you mind if I get to a question here?
Of course, yes.
Galen is asking, Chris, how do you do research for this information? Is it leaked out, or is it just rumors?
Well, in terms of how I start when I sit down and write a blog, often it's things I'm aware about or things that are on my radar because I've heard about them online or I've heard about them in the news. I mean, there's one conspiracy theory I wrote about very recently because it was popping up on Facebook in all sorts of places. Is to do with Hillary Clinton having been replaced by a doppelganger of some description, a clone or a android or something. Nobody necessarily has said, but they think that she's a fake. And that was just something that came up on Facebook. But yeah, I mean, I'm always looking for new topics to write about, and new topics that could make great short stories as part of the series of short stories that I'm writing. So and then when I do when I've decided on a topic, do you know what? I tend to start with Wikipedia, because Wikipedia, lots of people say that Wikipedia isn't reliable. I think I would tend to disagree there, because it compiles different viewpoints, and when you're researching a conspiracy theory or you're researching an event that has lots of unanswered questions, that's a good place to start, because you get different perspectives from different people, all compiled in one place. And obviously, if you check out your citations, your sources, which I often do, and then I get on to reading other articles and etc. That's why the blogs I write tend to be quite objective. I try and look at all sides of a conspiracy theory, and as I said earlier, I try to find out exactly what the evidence is. So.
And the one thing I learned when I was in journalism, and it was more so in sports than it was in the newsroom side, but in sports, because athletes always talked in cliche, we as reporters would have to learn to read between the lines.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to give a quick example of that, and I'm going to use a hockey example. I remember going into the 2006 Olympic Games, I was good friends with a hockey player agent, and one of his clients, who was going to be Canada's top defenseman on the hockey team, all of a sudden had a knee injury, and there was some big debate whether or not he was going to go. So I saw him at a hockey game, and I'm like, "Hey, Kevin, so when do you leave for Italy?" He goes, "I no longer have a reason to go." I said, "Oh, your client Scott isn't going?" He goes, "I'm not saying anything to you. All I'm telling you, Dave, is I no longer have a reason to go to Europe for the Olympics." So right there, you now have to, I mean, that's an obvious one. You have to read between the lines, but there he is telling you a breaking story, so we immediately ran with it, because that's what you do as a journalist. And it's kind of the same thing as what you're doing, is you have to read between the lines, whether it's Wikipedia, whether it's any other information that you find posted, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I try to investigate each thing I read as well. I mean, I do these blogs every week, and I they take up a lot of time, most of the time, because I'm having to do a lot of research. But I try where possible so when I read something that says this eyewitness saw this or whatever, I try and then find out more about that eyewitness, and I try and find out exactly what the evidence is, where the evidence has come from, who reported it. I think that's why I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a conspiracy theorist, because there are some conspiracy theories out there. So Roswell, I did quite an expansive study of Roswell over the course of about 4 or 5 articles towards the end of last year, and obviously you could read a sentence that says, dozens of eyewitnesses have said that they saw alien bodies being shipped around at places like Area 51 and things like that, and they saw strange looking corpses and things like that, and they've seen lights in the sky and strange spaceships sticking out of cliffs and things like that. But then what I then need to do is actually look at the people who have said these things, and look at them in particular and try and assess whether they're reliable or not. And I think when I did look into Roswell, the particular witnesses that I looked at, and there aren't as many as you'd think, there's only a handful, and they're all conflicting with each other, and they're not reliable. Some of them have been debunked, and some of them have been proven to be hoaxes, but I think a lot of people collate them all together, and then they say, oh, lots of people have said this, this, and this, but you need to actually look behind that, and check on each individual story, and I think that's why I ended up concluding that I didn't think aliens had crashed at Roswell at all, and I think I do subscribe to the fact that there was a cover-up to do with Roswell, but it wasn't the cover-up that everybody says it was to do with aliens. It was to do with the Operation Mogul, or I don't know how you pronounce it, but it was an operation to do with a spy a spy balloon to do with spying on the Russians. And that's actually what crashed at Roswell. It wasn't a standard weather balloon. It was this special government balloon that had been covered up because it was all to do with the Cold War. I haven't seen any evidence beyond that, really, that would suggest to me that it was actually aliens. I mean, the bits of debris that were discovered at this crash site were bits of rubber and bits of Scotch tape and bits of sticks and things like that. And that was the first thing I wrote about when I started this study of Roswell. And I thought, well, how can we have an alien spacecraft made of Scotch tape? I mean, that's just silly. So I think that was my first sort of alarm bell about the conspiracy theories there. But yeah, you do have to investigate everything. I'm
going to cut you off there because we're within about 30-40 seconds of going to our first break. I'm going to disagree with you going into the break, my friend. There were damn it, there were aliens there, and you know what? I want you to do me a favor on November 19th.
Yes,
your day, which will be the 18th here. I have a gentleman who witnessed the second crash that happened in San Augustine. He was 5 years old. He touched the aliens on the ground. He saw the ship. So we're going to talk more about that and more with Christopher Berry right after this break.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I don't want to take a thing from you. I just want to feel like something real with you. I just want to fly high to another.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride as we do this 7 days a week. We want to remind you that on Spaced Out Radio, the Revolution Radio that we do participate in is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, contact freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Ambuscade is the password. Ambuscade. Let's try it out. Let's see if it works. And if somebody asks you, hey, what's that SOR Space Travelers for? That password? Just say, exactly. That's all you really need to do. It's that simple. All right, let's move on here. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. And our website is Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on TuneIn. You can listen on iTunes, download this or other podcasts, and we go from there. Christopher Berry is our guest tonight. His website, crberryauthor.wordpress.com. Chris, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. And we're having some Skype difficulties right now. I don't know why Skype is all of a sudden being a little poo-poo-ish. I don't know why. But we're going to try and get this back happening here momentarily. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to another break. I got to try and figure this out. I will pull out of that break as soon as possible, and we'll be right back, okay?
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with the UFO-Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia.
All right, we're going to try and fire this up. Chris, can you hear me okay?
Yes, fine. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, you were coming through. So what happened here? I just want the people to know, and it's kind of happening right now. Skype is actually showing me a blank screen, and it's not even showing me that you're there. It is the most weirdest thing that I have seen. It says that we are connected to both Revolution Radio and yourself at this time. I've never really had this happen. It's like...
Yeah, that's strange.
I don't know. Maybe it's the conspiracy side coming out. Maybe they don't want us talking, but we're going to do that.
Maybe.
We're going to roll on. So everybody here can hear you. So we are back in business, and that is a good thing that we are doing right now. Right before the break, we were talking about Princess Diana and moving into William and Harry, whether or not they know. I want to get to one topic on this before we get into another one regarding the royal family, and that would be the fact that a lot of people in England, Great Britain, and the Commonwealth in general draw many comparisons between Diana and Kate, William's wife. Do you believe that there is a lot of similarities? Because she doesn't seem to be playing it as public. But I do know there has been criticism because she refuses to wear the expensive gowns and dresses, and she sometimes, heaven forbid, wears the same outfit 2 or 3 times. And that has been a lot of strangeness that surrounds those type of critiques. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't know a lot about Kate Middleton. I know that she, like, from what I do know about her, I suppose the similarities between her and Diana are that she seems like a real person as well. That's obviously something that can't be said quite as in the same way as about the rest of the royal family. Whereas she, with her background and everything, she seems to be a bit more human. But I wasn't really aware people were criticising her and everything. But I mean, she's all the royals and anyone who gets involved with the royals and is under an intense media spotlight. So yeah, but I don't. She's not nearly as controversial as Diana was, but that's because Diana kept getting involved in lots of very good things, charitable things, but I think they were viewed as too political for the royal family, and so yeah.
I want to get to another conspiracy, and I'm going to state this one right off the bat. I know there's people out here who believe this. There's even people in our chat rooms who believe this. I think it's ridiculous, and I'm not shooting down the conspiracy, but I just don't believe it. Yeah. The fact that a lot of people out there, from David Icke on down, believe that there is reptilians living in Buckingham Palace, that the Queen is reptilian, Prince Philip is reptilian, Charles is reptilian, and it goes down the line along the bloodlines. What do you feel about that?
That one I wrote about fairly recently. That one is yes. That one is ridiculous. That one is a load of old bollocks. Excuse my French. But yeah, it's funny, that one. I mean, David Icke is a madman, and some of the people he's interviewed are literally insane. I mean, there's quite a long interview on YouTube that I posted as part of the article with I can't recall her name now, but it's this woman who believes that she was born into this reptilian cult to do with the royal family, and that she's actually witnessed the Queen eating people, I think, or drinking their blood, and all of this stuff. And it's just absolutely mad. And I think she believes that Princess Diana was killed by this group of reptilians. I'm just having a quick look at this article. I want to find this woman's name. Oh yes, Arizona Wilder. She basically said that she believes she was the subject of some mind control experiment by the reptilians. And David Icke interviews her, and she. Do you want me to read a quote from her?
I would love it. Yeah, absolutely.
Elizabeth. Yeah, so she says this of Queen Elizabeth II. I have seen her sacrifice people and eat their flesh and drink their blood. One time she got so excited with bloodlust that she didn't cut the victim's throat from left to right in the normal ritual. She just went crazy, stabbing and ripping at the flesh after she'd shapeshifted into a reptilian. When she shapeshifts, she has a long reptile face, almost like a beak, and she's an off-white colour. And I didn't watch this entire interview with this woman because it's extremely long, but she sounds so sensible. She's like the way she speaks and the way she presents herself. She doesn't seem crazy at all. And yet the things that there simply is no evidence for any of this at all. I think. She, as I said, she said that Princess Diana was also a victim of the same experiments, and that she the reason she knows that is that they were both present at one of these rituals. And it happened just before Diana's marriage to Charles. And the Queen was there, the Queen Mother was there, Prince Philip was there, and they were all brought into a room. And Diana was told right at the outset, as part of this ritual, that Charles's marriage to her was nothing more than a means to produce heirs, and that Camilla was his true consort. And I mean, it's absolutely crazy, but the conspiracy theorists who believe this, people like David Icke, they seize on lots of there's no evidence, but they seize on lots of things that have been said by people, little coincidences, little quotes by people. There's one that I mentioned in the article about it's from Muhammad Al-Fayed. He says it, and he said he called the royal family a Dracula family, whatever that means. And the conspiracy theorists have linked this to the Draco constellation, which they say that they believe the reptilians come from. And also the connection, the fact they calls them the Dracula family, they believe that the reptilians drink blood. So they've linked it to Dracula, and they think that Muhammad Al-Fayed basically knows that they're reptilians. He also says that there's a quote from him where he says that Prince Charles, by being involved in Princess Diana's death, he was clearing the decks so he could marry Camilla Parker Bowles, his crocodile wife. Now, I have no idea what Muhammad Al-Fayed meant by calling her a crocodile wife, assuming that's just some quite interesting insult. But the conspiracy theorists who believe in the reptilian theories believe that he was referring to the fact that Camilla Parker Bowles is a lizard. So that that's what he was referring to there. But it's just nonsense. And David Icke has been ridiculed in the media in this country, right from way back when he did an interview on TV with Terry Wogan, and I think he referred to himself as the Son of God or something like that. And it's just, I mean, he has some serious issues, that man.
And it's one of those idealisms that when you pray, and this is my opinion, when you pray on the fear, especially of those who have had a traumatic experience with reptilians or extraterrestrials of some sort, or even MK Ultra or any government program like that, it is so easy to get followers if you start talking their lingo. And I strongly believe that is what's happened here. Although I do find it kind of interesting that at 90 years old or 88 years old that the Queen refuses to give up her throne to her son. You know, I think that's getting a little ridiculous.
Well, I mean, no, as far as I'm aware, I do have a reasonably good knowledge of British history, and as far as I'm aware, no king or queen in the past has given up their throne on account of their age. They've given up their throne when they've died. So, I mean, there was one abdication, I think, in the early part of the 20th century, Edward VIII, but he abdicated because of his relationship, as far as I'm aware. I think there was a movie about it that Madonna made, I think. I don't know much about that, but he abdicated for that reason. But I haven't known any previous monarchs to abdicate on account of their age. And to be fair, she's doing quite well. She seems quite fit, and her mother lived until she was got past 100. I can't remember how old she was when she died, like 103 or something. And yeah, I think she's got a fair bit of life left in her, our Queen. But maybe that's because she's a lizard. I don't know.
She is one of those people Those lizard people, as you say. I want to get to a question here from Everett.
Yep.
And he is asking, Chris, are you familiar with the claims that the American CIA and NSA conducted MK-Ultra experiments, promoted Satanism, and hid the crown jewels of Liechtenstein in the suburbs of Chicago?
I'm not familiar. I've heard of MK-Ultra. That's not one that I've actually written about yet. I do plan to at some point. I feel like there was a reference to MK-Ultra in the movie Conspiracy Theory. I don't know if everyone's seen that. It had Mel Gibson and Julia Roberts in it. It's quite a good film, actually. And I think there was a reference to MK-Ultra in that, because I think Mel Gibson played a conspiracy theorist who was paranoid about literally everything that ever happened in the world. And then he actually stumbles onto a real government conspiracy theory, a real government conspiracy that I think is to do with mind control experiments. So no, I don't know much about it, and I don't know what the evidence is for it. I mean, there's the CIA are often the target of conspiracy theorists. I mean, they're the ones who tend to get blamed for JFK's death, Marilyn Monroe's death, and various other things. So, but that's one I'd quite like to look into. That sounds quite interesting. Hiding the crown jewels. So yeah.
Serena has a really good question here. She is asking, Chris, do you ever investigate whether or not a conspiracy theory is planted disinformation from one of the letter agencies around the world?
Planted disinformation. Well, I don't know if everybody's heard of the Mirage Men, but I feel like that sounds a little bit similar to what this person's asking. The Mirage Men are said to be government agents who deliberately spread information about UFOs and about aliens to UFO circles to try and distract people from what the government's actually doing. And I can't remember his name now, but I talked about him in one of my articles. I think I did an article about Men in Black, as in the real Men in Black. And there was this former agent who said that one of his jobs was to fuel conspiracy theories, fuel UFO conspiracy theories, to cover up things that the government was doing. So, for example, Roswell, and there were supposedly Mirage Men involved in trying to spread ideas about UFOs having crashed in Roswell to cover up the fact that there was a government project that went wrong there, and that's the balloon that crashed was actually part of this project, and it was all to do with spying on the Russians. So so I've looked into that. I don't know if that answers the question really, but yeah, I am aware that there are some conspiracy theories that are planted, which I find quite interesting.
Get to a question from Galen, and we'll take this one across the pond to North America. What do you think, Christopher, about NASA? Real moon landings or not?
I believe we landed on the moon. Yes, I obviously wasn't around at that point back in the 60s, but I was very aware of the conspiracy theories. I actually, the reason I wrote an article about that is because I saw an absolutely brilliant movie, Interstellar. It's not about the moon landings. It's got Matthew McConaughey in it, and at the beginning of the film, it's set in the future. He's talking to a school teacher who says that the textbooks for the school have been updated with the real story of the moon landings and the fact that they were an elaborate hoax to to cover up the fact that the US was just trying to win the space race with Russia. And obviously, and Matthew McConaughey's character is quite shocked that this teacher doesn't believe that we went to the moon. So that was the reason I wrote the article, and one of the main things that conspiracy theorists latch onto is the footage of the moon landings and discrepancies they've spotted in the photographs and the footage. So I looked at all of these discrepancies, the fact that there were no stars in the sky, the fact that there appeared to be wind blowing the flag that they'd planted in the ground on the moon. But I mean, with regard to both of those, like, NASA had some very convincing answers to both of them. Well, firstly, you can actually sort of see in the footage and in the photographs that the flag is not waving in the wind, that it's basically attached to a pole that it's spread out, so it's not just falling like a flag that you just stick in the ground will fall. It won't just won't just spread out so you can see it. But they had actually attached it horizontally across to this pole so that you could see the flag. And obviously, like any flutter, wasn't to do with any wind. It was just the fact it was fluttering after he just put it in the ground. So it doesn't actually look like there's any wind blowing it at all. And the stars in the sky, or the lack of them, NASA have said, well, that's because it was actually daylight on the moon. Yes, so that it doesn't have the same atmosphere that Earth does, but it was daylight, so the sunlight was blotting out the stars in the same way that when you're on Earth, you can't see any stars during the day because of the sun. So things like that were quite convincing, and yeah, I mean, there are a few slightly odd ones where you can allegedly see like a studio light reflected in one of the helmets of one of the astronauts, but I mean that could be anything. It could just be a smudge on the lens or whatever. And I think also that they say that there's spotlights on the astronauts. So in some of the pictures, it looks like a false light is shining on them. But I've looked at the photograph, the better quality photographs, and that light is actually it's not as pronounced as it looked in the original photograph. Some people are obviously saying that NASA's edited the photographs since then, but I don't believe that. I think the idea that we didn't land on the moon would have to have been maintained by so many hundreds of thousands of people, none of whom have actually come forward and said, "Oh yeah, actually, yeah, we did fake the moon landings." I think it's slightly ridiculous to think that that could have been kept secret for so long by so many people as part of NASA. And I also think it's quite compelling that the conspiracy theories about the moon didn't actually become popular or didn't even start really spreading until after the release of the movie Capricorn 1. And Capricorn 1 was obviously about them faking a landing on Mars and actually showed a few bits and pieces about how they did it. And I think that's kind of what inspired people to start looking at the footage of the moon landings and start poking holes in that. And start seeing shadows as well. That was the other thing that they were poking holes in. But again, like the shadows were just to do with dips in the ground, and it just when I looked at the criticisms of the footage and what NASA had come back with, I didn't think there was any compelling evidence to say that we didn't land on the moon and that that NASA faked it.
My personal thought on it is, I believe we did go there as well. I do believe that maybe Stanley Kubrick did touch up some of the video, if we could say that, in order to make it look a little bit better for TV. I'm not too sure about that, but that's just my feeling on it. I also believe that, and I'll take this conspiracy a little bit further.
Yeah,
I was tipped off by someone who is good friends with astronaut Ken Johnson, who was part of the Apollo space program and was there in Cape Canaveral when they landed on the moon. And he has come out on record saying that he recalls Neil Armstrong, when he touched down, went over to the emergency line that the public could not hear and basically said 3 statements that I'll never forget. And that was, they are here, they are watching us, and they are up on the hill. Something in that order. And anyways, long story short, I believe the reason why we haven't gone back to the moon is because I think we were politely asked not to, or there's already a base up there if you think of the secret space program that a lot of people are giving some credit and merit to. So I think it's one of those 2 reasons, and I believe strongly that eventually the Chinese will find out something that they don't really want to find out, and they'll be asked not to go back either.
Right, okay. Okay, that's quite interesting. I haven't heard that theory before. I have heard theories about there being a secret Nazi base on the moon, and something about Hitler never actually died. Hitler, he went to the moon or something like that. So I might look into that one. But I have always wondered myself about why we never went back to the moon, because there were a lot of missions to the moon in the 60s and 70s. Obviously, several of them were unsuccessful. But that's an interesting one. I might look into that myself.
For sure. Let's move on here. Let's stay in space, sort of.
Yeah.
I know you love the topic of flat Earth.
Yes.
And I say that with a smile on my face.
Yes.
What do you think?
I'm smiling too.
What do you think of all the flat Earth talk? Because the people who are behind it have some very, very interesting theories that literally, if you take the time to just let your mind wander away from what we learned in school, what we've learned from television, what we've learned from NASA and everything, the flat Earth theories, as much as I do not buy into them, their arguments are pretty interesting when you think about it.
Yeah, they are, and I'm certainly not an expert in physics at all, or science generally. That was not one of my favourite subjects at school. So, I'm sure there's lots of other people out there, whether they're flat earthers or not, who have a better idea about the physics of all this. But I did look into this for an article, and I looked at some of the arguments for flat Earth theory, and a lot of people. One of the main things is that if the Earth is a sphere, then the surface of a large body of water, so a lake or something, should be curved. And where are the curves? Why can't we see the curves? And then there's obviously a counter argument to that says that obviously there is a curve, but we just can't see it because it's too, the Earth is so huge that we can't actually physically see the curves. But when a ship sails into the horizon, we it does eventually disappear. It appears to sink, and that's because the Earth is curved, and therefore it's going over the curvature of the Earth. But it's difficult for us to see because the surface of the Earth is so large. But yeah, a ship will eventually disappear. But flat earthers then say, contrary to that, is that it only appears to sink. So they talk about the limits of our perception or something like that, and there's a vanishing point or something that the ships intersect with, and they get so close to the surface they seem to merge with it, and then they're just lost from our perception altogether. And they say that you can actually restore the ships. So if you look through a telescope, you'll see that they haven't disappeared at all. And I looked into this because I thought, well, that's very interesting. Like, if you can actually, they appear to disappear into the horizon because the Earth is curved, and then you can look through a telescope and they're actually still there. But so I looked into this, but there's no evidence that anybody's restored a ship that's been partly or totally hidden by the horizon. The ships do disappear over the horizon. You can't bring them back with a telescope. I just haven't found any evidence that that's ever happened. Although I did watch a hilarious YouTube video. There's a British flat earther called Joseph Clemira who tried to demonstrate in his kitchen, I think, that the sinking effect of ships is just a trick of light and optics, and it's nothing to do with the curvature of the Earth, because obviously the Earth is actually flat. But he did this with if I remember, he did it with like paper boats and there was a jug of water, and he just had a work surface and a shaky camera that wasn't attached to anything, wasn't attached to a tripod or anything like that. He basically kept going up close to the paper ship with the camera, and then pulling back and trying to show us, the audience, that the ship is sinking without the ship actually moving. But he was just it was a shaky camera, and he just kept dipping lower behind the work surface. So, it was just, I think this guy is serious. I think this was a serious YouTube video. But I could not contain myself when I was watching it, because I thought, what are you doing? Like, obviously we can see that you're moving the camera lower behind the work surface so that we can no longer see the ship, and yet he was trying to prove that means that the Earth is flat, and that ships don't really disappear because of the curvature of the Earth. It's all just a trick of light and sight and perception. So yeah, but yeah, as I say, that is my most popular blog on my website, the Flat Earth article that I've written. And that's the one that seems to get the most comments as well. And some of the comments are really in depth. And some of them do go into the science of it. And I try and read through every comment I get. Some of the comments on the Flat Earth article have been so scientific and so in depth, and beyond my comprehension. I just don't get it. I'd have to be a scientist or a physicist to try and argue some of these points, and I just can't. Some of them are highly religious comments, and they start talking about the Bible and Satan and all of this lot. But my own view of flat Earth, but beyond getting into the science and the physics of it all, is that, again, as with the moon landing conspiracy theories, so many hundreds of thousands of people would have to be lying and would have to be keeping a secret. Everybody at NASA is the one that provides us with all these images of the Earth and the fact that the Earth is a globe. and all these pictures from space, everybody at NASA would have to be in on this conspiracy, and it's just too much to believe that nobody's breathed a word of it. You know, we've known for a very, very long time that the Earth is not flat. So to say that a massive proportion of our population is lying about this is just ridiculous, I think.
Well, partying like it's 1699 again, the Muslims tend to believe that the earth is flat as well. And their claim to that is, in the Quran, it says heaven will fall to earth eventually. I'm paraphrasing here. And it will land on the holy city of Mecca. Now, their argument is, if the earth is spinning and a globe, there is no way that the heavens will be able to fall onto Mecca. But if the earth is flat and the heavens are sitting above Mecca, when they do come down, they will be able to land easily on it. So the Muslims tend to believe that the earth is flat, and that's a large portion of the population. We're looking at 1/5.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure I'm sure not all Muslims believe that the Earth is flat. I have a Muslim friend who I may be seeing this week, so I will ask him his view on flat Earth and whether he believes that. I mean, the thing is, obviously, a lot of things have been written in all the different holy books, and you know those. Myself personally, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in virtually anything that's in all of these holy books, because they were written so long ago. There's very little historical evidence to back up most of the stuff that's in them. They were written by people who didn't understand the Earth, didn't understand space, and had very limited scientific knowledge compared to what we have now. So no, I wouldn't trust anything that's in the Bible. And some people who've been commenting on this article have been using holy scripture to try and prove that flat Earth is real. And I always say, and we then get into an argument on the historical accuracy of the Bible, and you just cannot trust what's in that book. It's too old, and it was written by. It's not historical evidence. I mean, if you actually, I studied history at school at A level, and one of the things we were always taught was to look at every historical source and to assess it, and you assess it by looking at if there's any corroborative evidence, any objective evidence, find out when it was written, find out who wrote it, why they wrote it, and as I say, see if there's anything to back it up. And the Bible really fails virtually all of these tests. So no, I don't think you can trust what's in them, and you certainly can't use them as to support arguments about flat Earth. But as I say, I will ask my Muslim friend if he knows anything about flat Earth. But I think there are plenty of Christians and Jews and Muslims who they have their holy books, but they acknowledge that a lot of what's in them is either not real or is just symbolic. They're just stories. They're not actual historical events. A lot of what's in them. I mean, there's not every Christian believes that Adam and Eve existed and were real, or that the Earth was created in 7 days, because obviously there's no mention of evolution or dinosaurs in the Bible, but that's because they hadn't been discovered at that point.
But there is great beasts. There is great beasts, because I asked that question, and I have studied that. Great beasts could be dinosaurs in the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I want to look into in future articles is that there are several quite interesting mentions in the Bible, several references to things that some people have suggested might be spacecraft, might be aliens. I think I did look into the writings of Ezekiel, where there were these 4 living creatures who came down to Earth, and the descriptions of these creatures they sound quite alien. So the references to the shape of the objects they're seeing that does sound like it could be some kind of spacecraft. And obviously a lot of people believe in ancient aliens that thousands of years ago we were getting visits by extraterrestrials, and some people believe that these visits have been documented in the Bible. So yeah, that's something I'd like to look into at some point. But
well, the interesting part about the spaceships is if you go on any of the Incan or Mayan ruins, or you go to the pyramids in Egypt, there are what's the word I'm looking for? There are, paintings in the rocks of some sort of mysterious craft sitting in the sky looking illuminated. And they are all over the place. However, science and the media and the historians, obviously not wanting us to know about this, they kind of keep them quiet. It's just like there's a lot of Jesuit paintings of Jesus Christ, Mother Mary, everybody like that, where in the background you can actually find spaceships as well. So I believe that there is something along to that is being covered up over time, whether it's the Roman Catholic Church, whether it's other religious deities who are and priests and parishioners and heads of state that are covering it up. I do believe there is something more to it. Yeah. But, and I'm saying this, I'm a spiritualist. I am not religious. Mm-hmm. I will define what I am. I am a spiritualist. I have had some very, very intriguing experiences on my own that I would counter with some of your thoughts, and I would love to get into that discussion with you sometime. Because have you heard my sermon? Maybe you and I should talk. No, I'm kidding. Maybe you and I should talk about that. Anyways, the whole point is I do believe there is something more out there, and I just don't believe, I am a firm believer, I should put it this way, I am a firm believer that there is a huge discrepancy between faith and religion. Religion is man-made.
Yes.
Not a fan of the religion. However, the faith part, and I do believe there is a God. I do believe there is higher powers. I do believe, after my own experiences that I have had personally, and there has been 5 of them that I can recount, including seeing a spirit leave the body, that there is something more to this that we are just not figuring out. So that is my own personal experience. Now, for you to believe me, you have to take my word. You don't know me, so it's going to be hard for you to do that at this time. But I do say this. I do believe there is something more out there. And I'm not trying to make this a whole religious talk, so I am actually going to change topics here because we're going to get everybody fired up tonight, and that's not the big reason why on it. Back to flat Earth a second.
Yeah.
Where's the edge?
Well, yes. That's one of the arguments against flat Earth. But flat Earthers believe that they believe that, I think, Antarctica surrounds. I think that they believe that Antarctica is like a wall, and that surrounds the flat Earth. I'm not sure exactly how that, what their evidence is for that, because I'm sure there's plenty of people who have visited Antarctica and documented it. So yeah, so they believe in this giant wall of ice. So yeah, that's that's why we haven't found the edge.
So what's on the other side? I posted this in the chat room. The other side, is that the Clinton Foundation's reptilian factory? What's on the other side?
Well, yeah. I mean, I might at some point do a sequel to my flat Earth article, because there's a lot more to be discussed. Because as I understand it, flat earthers don't believe in the rest of space. They don't believe in other planets, and I can't remember what they say about stars. But yeah, they. I think they just believe that this is it. That we're it. But I would need to look into that a bit more to find out a bit more about what their thoughts are on the universe, not just on Earth and flat Earth, what they actually believe about the universe, because I haven't gone into that yet.
One flat earther that I know believes that we are like in one of those, what are those toys where you turn it upside down, you shake it, and the snow falls.
Oh, a snow globe.
A snow globe. That's what they believe that we are, is like a snow globe, where there is this bubble over top of us, that there is no space, there is no stars, there are no other planets. Mm-hmm. Now, the screwed up part about this theory that this one gentleman, and I'm going to keep his name to the side, is this. He also believes that we are visited by extraterrestrials. And my question is, how the hell can there be nothing above this globe, that it's all man-made, and yet somehow in between, aliens are getting through this bubble in their spaceships to come visit flat Earth? Mm-hmm. So there is something out there that's a little bit different. But some of the theories are just so wild, man. They just do not make sense, and drives me nuts. And I'm sure it does for you, too, as someone who has to research this for your own audience.
Yes, but I think... I mean, my blog is quite lighthearted, and I do my research, and I try and get to the heart of what people are saying and what people are accusing. But yeah, so some of the slightly madder conspiracy theories, so flat Earth and reptilians and Paul McCartney being dead and having been replaced by a fake. These are all very very out there conspiracy theories, but these are the ones I kind of like writing about the most, because they're so crazy, but they do make for quite entertaining reading. So maybe that's why I like I said, my flat Earth article gets more views each day than all of my other articles. That's like the top article every day, and I don't know if that's just flat earthers reading the article. I mean, there has been a lot of flat earthers reading it because they've been commenting, but I don't know if a lot of people like myself just find it very entertaining to read about these people who still believe the Earth is flat, which was disproved centuries ago, way before NASA got involved and started taking pictures of the Earth from space. People have believed that the Earth's a sphere for centuries. It does make for quite entertaining reading. So yeah.
You just opened up a whole Pandora's box with Paul McCartney and the Beatles. I wasn't even planning on going there tonight, but you're forcing me to do it now, and we only got a couple minutes here before we got to go to our break here. Can you believe we're almost 2 hours down?
No, I can't. I really can't. There's so much more to talk about. We haven't even started on time travel yet.
I know.
Whole other kettle of fish.
And if you saw my notepad in front of me, you would see that I've literally drawn over the letters of time travel numerous times to make sure that we hit that topic. You know what? Yeah. When we come back from break, we'll get into time travel. We'll get into Paul McCartney, because that'll take us right to the end of the show. And then we're going to have to bring you back to get into way more of these other conspiracies, the fun ones, as you call it, that you like to get into, because I love this type of talk, man. I really do.
Yeah, I know, I do too. I'd be happy to come back.
Well, I hope you're having fun tonight.
I am, definitely.
Great, because I know our audience is loving you as well. So, let's just keep it up. Let's just rock and roll with it and go from there. Rock and roll, right. No pun intended to the Paul McCartney thing. And you know what? We'll just tease him a little bit here. I personally, Chris, love time travel. Ever since I heard the John Teeter story back in the early 2000s, I have been an absolute fanatic about time travel, and of course the Back to the Future movies. I'm just waiting for the DeLorean.
Made,
I think so too. And what's weird is how many of those weird estimates came true in the Back to the Future movie. Almost like somebody knew what was going on.
Yeah. What do you mean in the future scenes in Back to the Future?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we haven't got flying cars yet, which when I'm in a traffic jam, I really, I still get very angry about that. We really should have flying cars by now.
Your DeLorean isn't working?
No, sadly not.
Exactly. I hear
the amount of time we spend in traffic jams. That's the one they should have focused on, the flying cars thing.
Try driving in Vancouver sometime, where they're still planning for a 1970s type road construction. It's terrible.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's have a highway that has lights every 100 feet. You'll be back on Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Time travel right after this.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Space Wire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spaceoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you along for the ride. Remember, if you're listening in on the Double R machine, thank you for tuning in. Revolution Radio is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. If you're a space traveler or wanting to be an SOR space traveler, Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight. Ambuscade is your password. Ambuscade. Bill's taken it easy on me lately with the passwords. I can actually pronounce them. Thank you, Bill, for doing that and setting the password each and every night on this show. Hey, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. You can download this radio show or many of our others. If you're an iTunes member, you can download them today. Make sure you wait until this one's over, though, because you'll want to catch it. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can join up for the SOR Space Travelers Club. It is $5 a month. You get a bunch of perks and privileges with that. Read up on our latest weird news from our SOR Spacewire news reporter, Eric Markham. Check out our latest blogs. Listen to some great music from our resident guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses. And, of course, if you have a weird sighting that's strange, weird, you can fill out a Sightlines report. Our reporter and investigator, Mike Schmidt, will check it out for you. Tomorrow night on the show, we're going to have live ghost box sessions for 3 hours. Bill Hauser is back. He's one of the best in the business when it comes to the ghost box. We're talking hauntings and ghosts tomorrow night. Tonight, though, we have one final hour with author Christopher Berry. You can check out his website, crberryauthor.wordpress.com. Chris, welcome back.
Hello.
Thanks for going the distance with us tonight. And
all right.
I definitely want to get into the Paul McCartney thing, but we're going to wait on that.
Okay.
Time travel.
Right.
This is something that has intrigued mankind literally probably since the beginning of time when man started looking up into the stars.
Yes, yeah.
A lot of people today in the conspiracy world believe we can already do this. We've seen people like Andrew Basiago come out and say he was a time traveler. Many others have come back. Max Spears, who recently passed away, believes he was a super soldier and that we do have a secret space program where we've been to Mars, we've been to Venus, we've been to a couple of Saturn's moons, we have a base on the moon. What do you look into when you are looking into time travel?
Well, the thing is, for me, time travel, I've always been a massive fan of time travel. I'm a big Star Trek fan, I'm a big Doctor Who fan, love the Back to the Future movies, the Butterfly Effect, that's one of my favourite movies. So I love the concept of going back in time and seeing how we used to live or seeing how our own lives were at a previous point. And the idea that we can go back and change things and then potentially mess up or influence the future in some way. And I think my love of conspiracy theories as well, that's what led me to create the novel that I'm working on, Million Eyes. I developed this idea that real events in our history only happened because of time travelers, because they've been tinkering with the timeline for their own ends, and obviously the mystery of what they're trying to do is very much at the heart of Million Eyes. And of course the short stories that are accompanying it, which I've been getting published in various places. But interestingly, I started with time travel as the concept of the book, with real conspiracy theories, real historical events that are mysteries that are unsolved, and I combined those two. Started writing the novel, and then I obviously started writing the blog a couple of years ago, and it's only really then that I discovered there's a lot of people that already, that believe that time travel is happening all around us, and that they sort of believe in the plot of my novel in a way, which I hadn't realised at that point. I hadn't studied this in detail, that the study and the research that I've been doing for the blog happened after I'd already written and plotted the novel. So I find that fascinating, and I've obviously been using some of these instances, some of these events, as the plots of some of my short stories that are all set in the same world as the novel. And there's some really interesting ones out there. I mean, the ones that you've just mentioned are ones that I hadn't actually heard of myself. There's several others that I've written about. I don't know if you've heard of Rudolph Fentz, but that's one that's particularly fascinating to me. That's basically a story that popped up in the 70s. It's basically become a bit of an urban legend, whereby this guy was seen in Times Square in New York. People noticed him, and he looked disoriented. He was sort of walking around, it was as if he had never seen a car before, and then he ran out in front of a taxi and was mowed down and killed. And it was as the police investigated his body. The other thing I should mention is that people noticed his clothing. He looked like he'd stumbled out of the 1800s. And when the police investigated his body, they found all these items in his pocket, like a really old banknote and really old coins and a receipt for a stable or something, for having a horse looked after at a stable. And they also found a business card with his name, Rudolph Fentz, on it. And the police did a bit of investigating, and they found that there was a guy called Rudolph Fentz who disappeared in 1876, just walked off into the woods and was gone. And nobody knew what happened to him. And so the theory is that he slipped forward in time. I mean, interestingly, the source of this story, the source of this legend, appears to be a fictional short story. It was that basically got accidentally misreported as fact. And that the short story was supposedly originally written by Jack Finney. Is that, if I'm remembering the name right? He's basically the author of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which lots of people will have heard of. His short story got misreported as fact in a journal in the 70s. However, it goes back a little bit further than that. It goes a bit deeper than that. And some people have said, and I can't seem to find, I did some research into this, I can't seem to find the source, but supposedly a researcher working for the Berlin News Archive supposedly found a newspaper article about what happened to Rudolph Fentz, about him getting run over by the taxi in Times Square, that predated the short story. And so it's like, okay, so if that came before the short story, then maybe the short story was actually reporting a real incident. So it's all a bit mysterious, that one. But that's one of the ones I come across. And there are other cases like this. There are other time slip cases. I wrote an article about a hotel that two couples visited. That appeared to be, they stayed there, and it was very bizarre. Like, the windows had no glass in them; they just had shutters, and everybody was dressed in old-fashioned clothes, and the beds were made of really old materials that they haven't used to create beds and mattresses for years and years. And then the stay cost them, a matter of pennies rather than pounds. It was much cheaper than they were expecting, and it was just slightly bizarre. And then when they tried to go back to that hotel, when they were back in that area, they couldn't find it. It was gone. And they believe this was on a British documentary series. I think it was Strange But True years ago. They believe these two couples that the hotel slipped forwards in time for a bit, and then perhaps slipped back. So that's an interesting one as well. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stories out there. Have you heard of the Charlie Chaplin time traveler?
Yes, the lady who is walking behind him looks to be talking on a cell phone.
Yes. Yeah, that's That's a fascinating one as well. That was one of the first ones I looked at, and I've actually written a short story. So I've written a short story about Rudolph Fentz. It's called "Who Is Rudolph Fentz?" and it was published by a British magazine last winter. It's out of print now, but I'm looking for publication elsewhere. But there's a I've written a short story called "The Charlie Chaplin Time Traveller." And that was published last month in a magazine called Tiger Shark, which is an online magazine. But obviously, you can find details about it on my website. But yeah, I use that because that was a very interesting one, and I was able to link that into the universe I've created for the novel. But yeah, that's this lady. I've watched the clip many times, and this lady just walks in the background behind some models of some animals, because it's the clip is from the premiere of The Circus, which is a Charlie Chaplin film. It's just a behind the scenes clip, and yeah, she's there. She's got something held to her ear, and she's talking on the phone. Well, it seems that's what it looks like. And this is in 1928, and this was spotted by an Irish filmmaker called George Clark, who was the one who posted the YouTube video, and it's since become a bit of an urban legend in a matter of years, and it was reported on in the media, and the video's been seen by millions of people now. It's become quite a story, but I mean, it really does look like she's on the phone, and yet. And because you can see her talking to the device that's in her hand, and it looks like at one point, just before the scene fades out, looks like she's having an argument with whoever she's talking to. And quite a lot of people have looked into this, and obviously people who don't believe in time travel and don't believe that she's a time traveler have been racking their brains for explanations. And the most likely one that everybody points to. And I think this is now considered officially debunked, but I'm not even sure that I really accept this. But people believe that it was a hearing aid. It was an early hearing aid device, and they posted images of this hearing aid or example devices a bit like it online. And today it looks a bit like a smartphone, but. That just doesn't ring true to me, because you use a hearing aid to hear people that you're talking to, and there's nobody around her. She's walking on her own. So who is she listening to, firstly? And secondly, why is she talking to a hearing aid? Like, you wouldn't talk to a hearing aid, I wouldn't have thought. And some people have said, well, maybe she was just testing it out, but they can't really seem to answer that question. But I just, that just doesn't really make sense to me. Having said that, the idea that she is a time traveller and she's on the phone in 1928 and she just walks by a camera crew, perhaps she didn't notice them, perhaps she didn't see that they were there, but I mean that would make her a fairly stupid time traveller, I would have thought, not to be aware that she's using a future device, and perhaps shouldn't be. But yeah, that's a really interesting one, and that's obviously why I made the short story of it.
Did you ever see the video of that Swedish gentleman who was trying to fix the pipes underneath his sink and ended up walking into a different future where he met himself at 70 years old? They had the same tattoo, and he actually filmed it on his smartphone.
Oh my God, no! But that sounds like one I should check out.
It's on YouTube. You can find it there.
Okay. Do you know the name of this guy?
Oh goodness! I will have to quickly Google it here. I am just absolutely Swedish time traveler. Bear with me.
I've heard the story of the time traveling hipster, as he's called, which is the photograph of a guy, I think in the 40s, who looks like he's wearing sunglasses and he looks like he's in a t-shirt.
That is right here in British Columbia.
Really?
That is about a hour and a half drive from me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, and I still have to get to that bridge. I have to. It's one of those weird things that I just need to look up. It's called Man Meets Himself. It's a gentleman named Håkan Nordqvist who has one of the more weird time travel stories. Now, of course, the debunkers say it's not true. It's just an advertising campaign or whatever it is. Yeah. But he has been all over social media saying it is true, that he did do this. So it's something for you to check out. Did you ever investigate the John Teeter story?
I didn't. I literally during the break I looked that one up because you mentioned that one before. But I think that was one. So there's actually a wiki page for time travel urban legends, and I think that's kind of where I started, and that's where I found the Charlie Chaplin time traveler story and the Rudolph Fentz story, and a few others. And I think, if I remember rightly, John Teeter was on there. But from what I'm reading here, it seems to have been debunked. It seems to have been a hoax, because several things that so this is a time traveler who said he came from the 2030s. But quite a lot of the things that he predicted about future events didn't actually end up coming true. So it appears that lots of people believe that it was just a hoax. I'm reading here that he was said to be the creation of someone called Larry Haber, who's a Florida lawyer, as well as his brother, who's a computer scientist. So. Yeah, and there are plenty of hoaxes out there. I mean, I looked into one called Andrew Carlson, which is a really interesting one. This guy basically is said to have come from the future and then started. He started bidding on the stock market or something. I don't know anything about the stock market, but he started trying to use his knowledge of the future for financial gain in the present. And then when he was arrested for fraud, he said, "Well, the reason I knew all this stuff and was because it's supposedly the authorities believed that he'd hacked." Into some government systems, and he'd hack some companies, and he'd hack their financial information, and that's how he was able to make all this money. But his argument was that no, he didn't hack anyone. He knew how the stock market was going to go because he came from the future. Which I thought was fascinating. So that is a little bit like the story in Back to the Future 2. Where obviously Biff is given this sports almanac from the future by his future self in the past, and then he's able to make bets on various sporting events and win them all because he knows what the results are going to be, and that's how he makes all his money. So it's really similar to that. I think I referenced that in the article I wrote. But when I looked a bit further into this, the original source article that, again, a bit like Rudolph Fentz had been reported in various places as a factual thing, this article originated on a website called Weekly World News, which, if you go to that website, it's a hoax website. And they actually say on their about page that they're writing, all their articles are for entertainment, and they don't profess to be writing anything that's true. So that was sort of a hoax as well. But sometimes these hoaxes by these like satirical websites, they get snatched up by people who think that they're real, and then they get re-reported on more regular websites that aren't deliberately publishing fake stories, and they're reported as fact, and that's how they end up being urban legends. And it takes someone researching the original source to actually find out where it's come from. So quite a lot of these time travel urban legends have been debunked, but there are still question. I mean, the Charlie Chaplin time traveler. There are still questions with that one because I'm just not sure I accept the whole hearing aid thing, and there don't seem to be, any really satisfactory answers to that. It's all just conjecture, and nobody related to this woman. This woman may not be alive now. If she wasn't a time traveler and she was just a regular woman in 1928, she's probably dead now. But nobody's come forward and said that they know her, or that she was a relation of theirs, or anything really. Which it's been that particular legend has been out there since 2010 now, and it's been reported on in a lot of places. Even some national newspapers reported on that one, so it's quite widely known. And yet nobody's come forward and said, "Oh, I knew her." So maybe she was a time traveler.
Do you believe then that? And I realize with all the debunkers and hoaxers out there that it's very hard to get a straight answer. But do you believe that we do have the ability to time travel? And I'm not talking about CERN and or anything along those lines. I'm saying deep black government objects and projects, because what we don't know is what's intriguing to me. And we have people. We have had people on this show who say they've been to Mars, they've been to the moon, there are bases all around. This gets into the secret space program once again. Do you believe we are that far advanced, but it is being covered up?
That is obviously the plot of my novel. That's the exact premise of my novel, is that we have invented time travel, or that an organization has secretly invented time travel and is using it to manipulate certain events in the past, or to learn about the past, or to influence, change aspects of history for their own gains. Do I actually believe? That's a great story. It really works as the plot for a conspiracy thriller, I think. But do I actually believe factually that that's the case, that we've invented time travel and it's being covered up by either governments or by corporations? Well, probably not at this point. I mean, I think some of the stories are fascinating. I've written about these alleged time traveler, like the hipster, the caught on camera, but that's sort of been debunked as well. Some people say that we're just misinterpreting that photograph because he's actually wearing clothes that would have been worn at the time, and I think there's a logo on his t-shirt that matches a sports team or something that was around at that time, but he just is out of place with the rest of the people who are at that bridge, who are all in suits and stuff, so it just looks odd, but his clothing is actually of the time. It just doesn't really register. But I mean, there's other like supposedly footprints have been found that are millions of years old, like way before humans on the earth existed. And certain items like microchips and things have been like little fossilized images of microchips have been found that aren't, there are some people have debunked some of these things, but there's some things that we just don't really know, and we're still trying to work out what they could be, and some of it is inaccurate dating, so saying some of these objects that are millions of years old, they aren't actually, and it could well be a human footprint or whatever. But yeah, I think it's. I mean, there's also not the conspiracy might not necessarily be that time travel exists now and it's being covered up. What about the idea that time travel will exist in the future? We will invent it, and some of these people who are popping up on film, on camera, and or leaving objects from the future in the past, what if they are coming from our future still now? So that is another idea. I mean, Stephen Hawking, he's always investigating time and time travel, or he has done. He's talked about it in the past, and he one of the reasons he said that he thinks that certainly time travel doesn't exist now, is that he says, well, where are all the well, actually, I think he uses it as an argument to say that, well, maybe time travel won't ever exist. And he says that, well, where are all the tourists from the future? And obviously, I used that quote in one of the articles because there are instances where we are finding potential tourists from the future. But, yeah, they could well be coming from our future. So it's... I don't necessarily believe that we've invented time travel already and it's being covered up, despite that's the plot of my novel. It does make a great story. But I do think that, we may well invent it in the future. There have been some scientists who have said that we may be able to invent the ability to at least travel back in time, I think they've said. I'd need to look into that a bit further, but I'm sure I read somewhere that they have been looking into the physics of all this, and it may well be possible in the future. So maybe that's it. Maybe some of these things we're finding, some of these artifacts that appear really out of place and appear to be way ahead of their time, they've been left there by time travelers from our future.
One of the most interesting artifacts that I can't put my finger on is in China. There was a little miniature watch that was found, a gold watch.
Oh, okay.
And it was said to predate 5000 BC or something along those lines, but it looks like a little Swiss watch. And there are photographs on it online, and that piece just absolutely trips me out. Or when you see, I have seen photos, and who knows if they're doctored or not, because I'm not an expert in those fields. But there has been like microchips found embedded in rocks. That is very interesting, because how would you get a microchip embedded in a rock that is who knows how old for it to be pressed in there? What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, the answer... So I did one article on this subject on out-of-place artifacts, which are called OOPArts. It's just an acronym of out-of-place artifacts. And I did look at this, a particular microchip, as allegedly 250 million years old microchip. It's said to this particular rock. It was found in Russia, and scientists did some tests on it, and they found that it was around 250 million years old. And embedded in it was this what looked like a microchip, and it's still unexplained. That's one. Like, some of these artifacts have been debunked, as I mentioned. Like some of it's to do with inaccurate dating. Some of it is to do with there's a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon called I'm probably not pronouncing it properly, but pareidolia, which is basically seeing patterns that aren't there. Seeing what you want to see and that's kind of what I know we're going to get onto the Paul McCartney conspiracy theories, but that's where that's quite important, and seeing supposedly pyramids and faces on Mars as well. That's where we're seeing things that aren't actually there. We're just seeing patterns that aren't real just because we want to see them. It's like the man in the moon. We see a face in the moon because our brains are like wired to see the human face everywhere or whatever. So that's why we see the face in the moon. But some of these artifacts, we're see, and some of these images and things, we're seeing what we want to see. Some of them haven't been dated properly. But this microchip that I wrote about, from this rock in Russia. There's just no explanation for that yet, and as I understand it, scientists haven't tried to remove the what looks like a microchip because they don't want to damage it. There are theories that it might be the markings of a plant, but I mean, I'm actually just looking at the article again now, and I'm looking at an image of it, and it doesn't look like a plant to me at all. It does look like a little chip, a little microchip. So the jury is out on that one. We still don't know what it is. So yeah, that is an interesting one. And again, like the idea that items from our future have been accidentally left behind in the past, that is a major aspect of Million Eyes, my novel. Again, I came up with this idea, this plot for the novel long before I even knew about all of these actual artifacts, these real cases of items that have been supposedly left behind in the past. So it's fascinating. I'm sort of going back and I'm incorporating references to some of these things into the novel now that I've discovered them. So yeah, it's really, really interesting.
Do you think the Mandela effect has anything to do with people's perception of time travel? Because the Mandela effect seems to be blowing a lot of people's minds lately.
You'll have to enlighten me there. I'm not sure what the Mandela effect is.
Well, what it is people believe that sometime during the 80s, the Earth went through a time shift where all of a sudden things that we remember are no longer as they were. Example, the JFK assassination. At the first videos, people only remember the two security details who were driving the limousine and JFK and his wife in the back seat. Well, now there's 6 people in the limousine, including a governor and his wife in between JFK and the security detail. The Mandela effect, there was news reports in the 80s that Nelson Mandela had died during the 80s in prison in South Africa, yet here he is alive. Well, not anymore, but he was alive, and when he got out of jail 27 years later, he gets elected as the first black president of South Africa. And there's so many different things. If you go back, I don't know if you had the children's books of the Berenstain Bears. Well, there's a big conspiracy about that because everybody remembers them as the Berenstain Bears, not the Berenstain Bears, as all the books show today. So there's this whole wonderment of maybe a parallel shift or some sort of timeline jump that has caused all these different things to happen. It's a very, very interesting piece of evidence if you look into it.
Yeah, I will have to. So it's said to have, the timeline itself is said to have changed at one stage, altered at some point. So initially, I thought you were referring to the fact that around the time of JFK's assassination was kind of where the conspiracy theory became really popular. That's when people seem to be inventing conspiracy theories about loads of different events. Because I mean, the Roswell, for instance, that happened in 1947. But the conspiracy theories, there was a few unanswered questions at the time, and there were a few newspaper reports there were questions asked at the time, and then there was another report that said, "Oh, it's just a weather balloon," and everybody forgot about it until around the 70s, I think it was. And this is obviously post JFK and all of the conspiracy theories that surrounded that. So I thought you were referring to the fact that around the time of the 60s is when the conspiracy theory became really popular, and that's when everybody started getting paranoid about everything. So you perhaps suggesting that maybe there was something that happened to the timeline, or perhaps these events, things about these events were altered.
Well, it's not me who's suggesting that, but there's a lot of theories out there that are trying to support that cause, right?
Right. Okay. That's really interesting. Now I'm going to look that one up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think you should. It's actually very interesting. I have a couple questions here. Steve is asking, do you believe, Chris, that the government is working on or has a teleportation machine?
I bloody wish they were, simply because I hate being stuck in traffic. I mean, that is the worst. I dread to. I haven't looked at any statistics, and I dread to look at any statistics of how much of our lives we waste sitting in traffic jams. And I so wish we had teleportation by now, or as Back to the Future predicted, we'd have flying cars, because then that would get rid of the problem. Do I actually believe they're working on it? I don't know. I haven't looked into any theories that suggest that they might be. I don't know if there are any out there. So I mean, in terms of whether this might play into the idea of time travel, I don't know. Perhaps these time travelers are teleporting back in time, or something like that. I don't know. No, it's an interesting one. I might look into see if there's any evidence for that.
Sure. I got another question here from Eric Markham. He is asking if you know anything about the Antikythera machine.
Antikythera?
Yeah.
No, I haven't heard of that. Have you heard of that?
No, I have not. And that's why we love the preacher around here, is he always throws us a little bit of a strange one like that. His mind is always working. That's why he's our resident scientist.
Right, okay. Always good to have.
Exactly. Well, moving on here, because we only got about 19 minutes left with you.
Yeah.
I do want to get into the Paul McCartney is dead theory.
Yes.
This one intrigues me because it seems like there are so many hints, and the Beatles, let's face it, probably next to Elvis, are still the biggest names in music history, if we can agree on that.
Yeah.
Why in the world would the Beatles want to cover up an original Paul McCartney death, if per se it's true?
Well, the theory there is that the reason they covered up his death is because his death happened right at the height of the Beatles' fame, and the members of the Beatles and their management thought that the public would just not cope with the fact that Paul had died, and that I think they were worried about mass suicides and things, because a lot of people can get pretty wrapped up in pop stars. I think that's the theory there, that his death was covered up to save the public, I suppose.
The old Abbey Road, where a lot of these theories come from.
Yeah.
What is the story behind that? Because they believe that that's really like with the missing shoes and the vehicles with the license plates. It gets a little, people who are into this, man, they're reading into this maybe a little too deep, and it does make for a very intriguing commentary on it.
Yeah. I mean, when I first heard about this theory, I thought that there was quite a detailed story of exactly what happened to Paul, and he was said that he'd been recording with the Beatles one night, and then he left the studio and was in a car crash, The Beatles found out about it, and the rest of them covered it up and replaced him with a lookalike. And I thought, the conspiracy theory is that certain members of the Beatles, it's normally John Lennon is the one who is cited as the person doing this. They were inserting clues into their album covers, into their songs, into their lyrics, and like certain, if you listen to certain songs backwards, you can hear hidden messages, supposedly. The conspiracy theorists say that that's the Beatles trying to let the public know what really happened to Paul. But really, it's the other way around. In terms of how the conspiracy theory came about, it's the other way around. People were noticing these clues, and they used the clues to piece together quite a detailed story. But when you look at when you take a closer look at the clues, it's a fascinating story, and I love it. And I've written a short story that's incorporated this as well, and it's one that's actually getting published next month on a website called Storgy, Storgy. If anyone's interested in reading it, it's my website has all the details. But it's one I've used, but. I mean, when I investigated this for the article, it's not one I subscribe to at all, because all these clues. So the Abbey Road album cover that you mentioned, that has Paul McCartney walking barefoot, out of step with the rest of them, and he's supposedly the corpse in that picture, and Ringo Starr, he's in black, and he's the Undertaker, and George Harrison is the gravedigger. And then John Lennon, he's dressed in white. He's supposedly the clergyman. It's like a funeral procession. But yeah, I mean, and then they've looked at some other thing. Like there's a license plate on one of the cars that's 28 IF or something, and they say that if Paul hadn't died when he did, which was said to be 1960. I can't remember the date now. He would have been 28 or something. And then there's the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and people have identified, like if you stick a mirror up to the drum in the middle of the album cover, you get the date on which he died. And if you look at the mirror image of it says 11/9 he die is what you can read. But I just and with the clues in the lyrics as well, and the where you can listen to a song backwards, and there's loads of YouTube videos online where someone has played the song backwards, and you can hear things like Turn Me On, Dead Man, and I Buried Paul, and all of these secret messages. I've listened to them myself, and they're just you can hear that if you're wanting to hear that, but it's not very clear. And the Beatles have actually answered these questions, and so the I Buried Paul one I can't remember which member of the Beatles it was, but said that he was actually saying cranberry sauce, not I Buried Paul. And yeah, when you listen to it again and you listen out for cranberry sauce, you're like, well, actually, yeah, that is what it is. And it's people kind of hearing and seeing what they want to see, and seeing patterns that aren't necessarily there. And it all stems from kind of a paranoia, I suppose. But it's a fascinating one. But I a lot of people link it to John Lennon's death as well, because there are conspiracy theories about his death, and the fact that whatever his name was, Chapman, who shot him, was said to have been working for either a government department or, the CIA or something like that, and was actually brainwashed or whatever. And the Paul is dead conspiracy theorists say that it was all to do with that John Lennon, he was the one who kept inserting all the clues into the album covers, into the songs, because he regretted the fact that they had covered up Paul's death, and that he was going to go public with it in 1980. He'd finally decided he wasn't going to keep it a secret anymore, and the powers that be, whoever was wanting to maintain this cover-up, had him shot and killed. But I don't think I believe that either. But it's a fascinating story, and I don't know if you've heard about the Heather Mills. Some of the things she's been saying.
Oh, fill us in.
Yeah, well, I like a few years. I mean, Heather Mills has been in the media many times, and it was in around when was it? I think it was around 2007. I think it was. She started going on. She went on Access Hollywood in the US. And she started saying all these things that were very cryptic. She was making accusations about Paul McCartney, and obviously blaming these mysterious accusations that she never actually spelled out for anybody. But she was blaming this was why the marriage broke down. And I'm just looking at my article and now, and I can read what she said on Access Hollywood. She said, something so awful happened. Someone I'd loved for a long time, I found out had betrayed me immensely. And I don't mean infidelity or anything like that, like beyond belief. People don't want to know what the truth is because they could never ever handle it. They would be too devastated. And people have seized on this, what she said, and been like, oh my God, she knew that Paul McCartney was not really Paul McCartney. She said that this is a portrayal that isn't infidelity, something the public wouldn't be able to handle. This is exactly what everybody's been saying happened. He's actually somebody called Billy Shears, who was just a Paul McCartney lookalike. And I think the presenter of the show goes on to ask you, he says, knowing what you know now about Paul, would you have married him in the first place? And she says, never. Some people have said it's never been clarified. She's never come out and said it. Some people think that perhaps Paul McCartney was abusive towards her. Some people think that Heather Mills is just a lunatic. And all of her, she had a few meltdowns. There was an interview with Fiona Phillips on GMTV, which is a British news show, and she said she got quite upset, and she's quite a melodramatic person, and she was ranting and raving about the press and all the abuse she'd been getting in the media. But she said some intriguing things on there as well that have been seized by conspiracy theorists. And she said, I've protected my husband, I know everything and I know the truth. And she then said, I have a box of evidence that is going to a certain person should anything happen to me. So if you top me off, it's still going to go to that certain person and the truth will come out. There is such a fear from a certain party of the truth coming out. Conspiracy theorists say that she's talking about Paul being dead.
Well, that's pretty much a $500 million question to her bank account.
Well, yes. Yes, it certainly is.
That is one divorce I wouldn't want to be in.
No, it's quite messy, I think.
Mm-hmm. So, who is Billy... I apologize, the last name.
Billy Shears.
Billy Shears. I wanted to say Billy Squire, but I know it wasn't Billy Squire.
Yeah, he's said to be he's said to be the person we think now is Paul McCartney. He's said to be the actual person he's the lookalike that the conspiracy theorists believe he was selected to undergo some plastic surgery to make him look even more like Paul. And I think his name comes from there's a track on the Sgt. Pepper album, and the lyrics in the title track on that album, they talk about having formed a new band with the one and only Billy Shears, and so people have been like, yes, they formed a new band, yes, because Paul McCartney's dead and Billy Shears is his replacement. I've seen lots on various websites. I've seen lots of pictures that have tried to compare Paul McCartney pre the alleged car accident, which took place in. I'm just trying to get the date. It was 1966, I think. November 1966 is when this alleged car crash is said to have happened. So people have put images next to an image of Paul McCartney pre that date and post that date, and they've tried to say, well, his face looks different. And I mean, I can't really see it myself. Like I said before, when you really want to see something, you'll see it. And this whole conspiracy theory is very similar to what's just been in the media literally weeks ago about Hillary Clinton, and her on the September the 11th, she gave a speech at a memorial event, and then she collapsed, and there's a video of her sort of collapsing as she's getting into a taxi, and it's a bit disturbing actually, that video, but then she materializes a couple of hours later and she's absolutely fine, and everybody says that she was replaced by a duplicate of some description, and they've tried to compare photos of her before that and after that, and have said her chin's different, one of her fingers is longer than the other, and her clothes fit differently or whatever. I can't see that either. I personally think that's nonsense. A lot of the conspiracy theories about Hillary Clinton come from the Donald Trump camp, obviously, because he loves a good conspiracy theory, as we all know. That's very similar to the Paul is dead conspiracy theory. So it shows that there's a lot of people out there that really do think that celebrities and people in the public eye are being replaced. But I haven't found any cases where that's actually happened. I don't know.
Happened or proven? That's always the big theory, my friend.
Well, yes. May well have happened. I'm sure there are, important politicians who... I don't know if you ever saw the movie Vantage Point, but it was a plot point in that whereby politicians perhaps, I don't know if this is true, but politicians will perhaps use a body double at important events to protect, as a protection measure. So as I say, I don't know if that's true. But it's conceivable, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. On that note, Chris, it's time for us to start wrapping some things up here. Can you believe that's 3 hours, my friend?
I can't believe that. No, it doesn't feel like that at all.
I told you it was going to be the fastest 3 hours you've ever had on the radio.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
My friend, I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to call you right back here in about 2 minutes because I got to figure out this Skype thing. It's still being a little bit crazy. But if you hold on, I will get back to you. If you're listening on the Spaced Out Radio side, you hear Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, rocking us in and out of every show. That's the way we do it around here. Tomorrow night on Space Out Radio, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, we get ghostly with Bill Hauser. Yes, our resident ghost box expert is back. 3 hours of channeling spirits, ghosts, whatever we want to call it. It's going to be interesting indeed. I cannot wait for that to take place. That's tomorrow night on the mighty SOR. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Find us on YouTube, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn, and you can find this show, as well as others, on iTunes. Download them today. We're getting like almost 500 downloads per episode right now just off of iTunes. It's kind of incredible. Remember, you can find everything that we do at spacedoutradio.com. And do me a favor. I know we got some pretty loyal people here. Tell a friend. That's how we're going to grow this, baby, because I want to take this to the next level starting right now. Let's do it. Talk to you in 21 hours.